VEVE is slowly becoming more known in the crypto and NFT space. And with its move to Immutable X and the MTL coming shortly, I wanted to look at some of the VEVE collectibles and comics to see what they truly could be worth in the future if we hold for the long run. So let's get into that. Welcome in everyone, my name is Andy and I appreciate you taking some time out your day to come and watch this video on the channel. Just before we get started, this is not financial advice, this is all my own experience. You should do your own research for anything that you're doing. Now, prices right now on the VEVE app are fluctuating quite a lot. I'd say we're pretty much at the lowest we're going to see these Season 1 and Season 2 collectibles at for a long time, especially after the transfer to Immutable comes, because there's going to be a lot more people who are going to be able to get their hands on these collectibles in a very short space of time. Well, it's going to be an interesting road to see how many people cash out and what they sell their collectibles at, how many new big players will come in to buy things, how the price will actually react. I'm more so looking at things for the future where we're years down the line and potential mass adoption is finally here. Now, right now with the price of the collectibles, you can get Batman's first ever collectible in NFT format for around $500. Now that's about 0.2 Ethereum when we look at it compared to OpeSea. And some of the things you can buy for 0.2 Ethereum is wild. Only the projects that are sort of slowly starting to build their way up and truly building their communities start at that price and then slowly work their way up. I mean, if you look at things like CryptoPunks, they were given out for free in the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I don't actually know if they were given out for free, but they would have been very early on in this space, and having that now is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we look at something released recently, this was CryptoDads. This project has been on the rise for about a month or so. Leading up to the drop, it started at about 0.3 and now it's up to about 0.9 Ethereum. If we look at it, 0.9 Ethereum is around about $3,100. And anything that really compares to that at the moment anyway is Givenchy or some of the secret rares in the comic book areas. Now there is of course more that are costing that price, but I just want you to give you an understanding of the base price that some of these very good projects hold and the values that they actually have. Now VEVE is a little bit different because with things like CryptoDads and all the other projects on OpenSea, they're all unique collectibles. None of them are the same. They're all different in some aspect. Well, they're very similar in some instances, but all of them have their unique aspect to it. And the difference with VEVE is they're all the same. Todd McFarlane's Batman, you have around 7,500 of them, which are all the same. And this is going to play a part in its long-term price and with what it's actually going to be worth. The reason things like Bored Ape Yacht Club are becoming so high and so expensive is not only because of the community, but because of their own uniqueness and owning the rights to their own NFT. In this instance, we don't own the rights to Batman itself, we just have the collectible. This is where we get a little bit speculative. We believe that VEVE is going to be the bridge between mass adoption and sort of NFTs in general, which it seems to be working towards that as its main goal. Then these NFT prices are going to be something special. Not only because they're the first on the app, but because their first appearance of Batman, because they have their first editions, and the mint numbers as well differentiating themselves as a sort of mint number or collectible in the NFT OpenSea space at the moment. And because they're all so different, it doesn't really matter what mint number you had. But like comic books in the real world, the grading for it will be sort of similar to the minting number of the NFT that you actually hold in the app itself. Some of these projects on OpenSea also rise upwards of $10,000 and, to be honest, really aren't that great and don't have that much of a roadmap to speak and actually hold that sort of value. And as this is the case, I see things like Givenchy, Todd, Spider-Man, and more surpassing the 10k mark easily in the future. And potentially, if marketing is done right and mass adoption actually does happen in 5, 6, and 7 years, and collectibles, especially like Todd, could be worth upwards of $100,000. I'm trying to base this off a variety of factors. One being the price of collectibles that they were first ever on OpenSea or CryptoPunks, if we take that for an example. Of course, they're a little bit differently to what we're trying to compare them to. The same Todd happens with every single Todd. There isn't really a differentiation other than the mint number. But you also have to think about how psychology works purely in the collector's format. With comic books, it's the grading system for it. How high a grade is it, the more people are going to pay. With things in OpenSea, rarer properties are going to get you more money because of what they are. So for me and VEVE, the first ever collectible on the app, it's the first ever Batman that's licensed by DC on the app and will ever be, and is also going to be able to differentiate itself through its mint number. And that's why I can see a price like $100,000 not actually being that far-fetched with something like that. I might be completely out of my mind saying something like that, but If I were to tell you that something like CryptoPunks were going for easily upwards of 500,000, some Bored Ape Yacht Clubs were going for 19 million, you'd think I was absolute batshit crazy. No pun intended. So to say that VEVE has over 400,000 people, a comic book sold out in less than a second with 10,000 editions, shows me that there's still a very massive following behind this that wants to see this app grow. The app was meant to have 35 to 40,000 people by this point, and it's got over 400,000. The community has always been solid with VEVE, backing it, and I see it constantly on Twitter with everyone talking about it, what they're buying, how many collectibles they have. And just as a side note, I passed 100 collectibles today, so I'm buzzing about that. There's so many people who are backing this, and the roadmap has already got so many things that just stand out way further from the crowd than anything else. I wouldn't have thought that the secret rares for the Marvel comics would be over 15,000, the first one on the app now. And that is probably going to continue to rise, because we have to think about how collectors genuinely collect and how this is going to be possible for a lot more people to get in a very short time. With the Mutable and MTL coming, people are going to be able to put their Ethereum in without them having to worry of their bank completely shutting down their account because they're putting $10,000 from their bank straight into VEVE. They can transfer their Ethereum, or potentially in the future using their OME to actually buy the NFTs, meaning there really doesn't have to be that much struggle to get things that you really want. I'm going to try and back this up with not as much speculative data, more of a genuine sort of proposal behind it, because I know you can just come on here and I could say it'll be worth £10 million and then that's it, but I'm going to try to back this up as best as I can with facts. And this is where it leads me on to the comics that have just been released. Now, there's been maybe 8 drops for the comics so far, I'm not too sure. All have sold out in less than 2 minutes, and 2 minutes was the first one, and everything else has been like under a minute, and the one recently had 10,000 editions. It sold out in literally a second. You couldn't get it after it was out, so it's been nuts to see how many people are genuinely going for these drops, how much demand is happening for this. Now, the comics started quite low, and I think this is purely because we've been so accustomed to digital collectibles. Comics were completely new for so many people, including me. I've never read a comic in my life. I've never picked up a comic from a superhero in my life. I've never been to a comic book store. I never thought I was going to be someone to read a comic. I'm now a massive collector of comics on this app because you can read them in AR, you can read them however you'd like, and I've been loving the comics. I've been loving to take a look at them, to read them, and to see what they're about, because it's so interesting to see what they are. So for someone like me, I know I'm not alone in that. A lot of people on this VEVE app would have not collected comic books whatsoever, but are now collectors of comic books. That is because adoption is starting to happen and changes are starting to be made, and why I believe the comic books started low and now people are realizing just how valuable these can be. There's also a podcast that I saw on Twitter, and it was mentioned, where it talked about how comic books and NFT world are going to be related to the grading system of quality that they have in the physical world. So your mint number is going to matter a lot more than anything else, because all the comic books are the same grade. They're all going to have a 10 grade because they'll never go down in that sort of way. But in terms of mint number, that's how collectors and true collectors are going to differentiate what one's more rare, what one's worth getting. For a little bit of data, we can make this more of an actual proposal rather than just guesswork. Now, Marvel Comics #1 was the first Marvel comic on VEVE as well, and the record sale of the Marvel 1 sold for $1.26 million. That had a 9.4 grading in 2019. A 9.0 listed a pay copy in February 2010 for $227,000. So we can already see people are willing to pay a lot of money for comics. If we look at the 875,000 value for the 9.4 rating, we can sort of base this system on the percentage of mints at certain areas. So if you take 98%, then the top 2% of mints of that comic is going to be the 9.8 grading. In that instance, they've valued a 10 out of 10 grading at 1.26 million. So if you're talking about something on the VEVE app where they cost around 30 gems, the lowest for the top 2% is probably $700 to $800. Then I can see this comic book in 5 to 10 years. I can't even begin to try and guess what I think this could be in 5 to 10 years. Especially if VEVE continues to do what they do and are successful as a company as a whole, which they have proven to be. I think for a lot of us, we can now see that they're actually doing a lot of work that's really, really good, and I hope that the people who are maybe doubting VEVE are starting to see that. But surely the top 2% of these mints of Marvel comic #1 could be easily upwards of $10,000, $20,000 and $30,000. overall. Of course, this comic was made in 1939 during World War, so finding one that has a 9.4 grading still to this day is just nuts. And I know that comparison is quite hard to make because we're so early with NFTs and physical copies have been out for so long. But is it really that far-fetched to see the first ever Marvel digital comic not being a massive, massive thing that collectors want to get, and especially the low mint numbers that they want to get, if that is the case and more people are going to adopt it the way we believe it is? For me, this is a no-brainer. This is just how I see the world moving. The world is going to become digital. It already is becoming digital. So comic books like this, although are going to hold their insane value, collectors are going to want to collect something else. It's going to be a new generation of people who collect NFTs and have them. It's already happening. Even if we go off the lowest price guide report for this at 2.0 grading, this grade report is averaging its price at around $30,000. I can easily see the NFT surpassing that with the lowest mints, purely based off of a collector standpoint. And this is also not to say that comic books are sort of on the decline. They're actually increasing. The unfortunate thing is I couldn't find out how many of these comics were actually made, and if anyone in the comments knows, please let me know. I've been trying to find out how many of these were actually made because there's around 48,000 on the VEVE app.
A comic. So, for example, the Marvel #1 comic, the 1939. I think back in 1939, they printed about 880,000 copies of these.
That means even more value for it because there's so many that is actually out there. But if we really think about it, 48,000 is just not that much. Not with an app that has over 400,000 people and we've barely even touched the surface of anything that's to come yet. Also wanted to take a look at comic book sales as a whole, just because I thought it would be interesting to find out what the market actually provides and what it's been doing. Now, it's actually interesting to see that comic book sales have definitely gone up over the last few years. I'm not really sure why. If anyone, again, is really big into comic books, I would love to know, and I would be interested to see why things change so drastically or why things go up and why more people start reading them. But if we look at an estimate by ICV2's Milton Hype and Comicron's John Jackson Miller, total comic and graphic novel sales to consumers in the US and Canada were approximately 1.28 billion in 2020, a 6% increase in the sales from 2019. That is just from America and Canada alone, showing that comic books and comic book collectors are still thriving. I see that starting to slowly shift towards the NFT and digital collectible space. Off of that statistic as well, it shows digital downloads counted for $160 million of those sales. So yes, it's still a small one compared to the 645 million of actual book channels being sold, but that number I can easily see increase over the next few years due to the fact that NFTs are becoming a thing. VEVE have already shown it's completely possible to do and more adopting this. Marvel and DC and all that already have their own comic book stores that you can have them digitally, but you don't own it the way you would own the NFT. It's just you can read it. With all this information, I understand that this video might be a little bit out there and a little bit different from what I'm used to. And of course, I'm nervous to even guess prices. I'm not often one to do that sort of stuff. I'm trying to be as realistic as I possibly can with this and give you a better understanding of what these original collectibles can really be. People want the first of things. People want the first appearances. People want to say that they are an owner, they are a collector of this. It's a status symbol. It's a social symbol. You are able to show you are this type of person by owning those. And yes, you may not be someone who's absolutely rich and can own so many OpeSea NFTs that cost an absolute fortune right now. I would say we're at a time in VEVE's life where you can get in where everyone else might not believe it's going to do anything. And when you look back in 3 and 4 years, when people are really starting to adopt it and really starting to get in onto why VEVE is going to be that bridge between everything, they're going to regret not being in earlier. Again, I can only speak from my personal experience. I hope this video comes across as informative and you can understand a little bit more as to what this project actually holds. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments of what you're planning to do moving forward in the future and how you see collectibles rising in price as we move into season 7, 8 and 9 on VEVE in the future. I know the video on the screen right now will be something you'll love to watch. Have a fantastic day.